All right, crew, today we're going to take a closer look at the conventional loan exhibit and pulling that up. Uh, Starts out pretty simple. Our traditional exhibit letter goes right here. We put in our offer date to match the date that we're making the offer on the purchase and sale agreement and the address of the property. Then we get down to defining what are the loans that we're applying for. And the purpose of a financing exhibit is if we are unable to get the particular loan that's listed within the time frame that we've given ourselves, that the buyer will get their earnest money back. So we have to define here, what is the loan that we're applying for? So we're going to mark A right here, okay? If this is a first and second mortgage being taken out for the purchase, we would mark both. But in today's market, second mortgages are not common. So by far the majority, 98 if not 99% of the time, you're just going to be marking A. And then what's the loan amount? Okay, are they putting 20% down, 10% down, 3.5% down, whatever the case may be? This is not how much are we putting down. This is how much is the loan going to be. So this would be an 80% loan, a 90% loan, a 96.5% loan. The typical term is 30 years, but there is the option that it could be 20, could be 15. What's our interest rate? Okay. And that cannot be a to be determined, and it cannot be left blank. Otherwise, you are leaving your buyer unprotected. We're saying that they can get their earnest money back if they can't get this loan, and you haven't defined what the loan is. So all of these spaces need to be filled out. So 80% of purchase price, 30 years, 3.25%, fixed and institutional. Move down to the second paragraph, and who is our approved mortgage lender? Okay, now if we put anybody in here, and we can put more than one lender in here, the loan denial letter that we have to get to for our client to get their earnest money back has to come from one of those lenders. So if there's any chance that you don't think that you're going to go to the closing table with that particular lender, if there's a chance the buyer's going to shop their rate, then we want to do one of two things. If we leave it blank, that loan denial letter can come from any lender, okay? But don't box your client into just one lender. So either leave it blank or put the lender that they've chosen, that they maybe got pre-qualified with, and then list your two preferred lenders. Keller Mortgage definitely should be in there because their 0+ loan may be necessary to make the deal happen with the savings that the buyer gets. Or perhaps it's Supreme Lending and you're using their rescue service when things don't go well with their initial lender. So from the buyer side, seeing it blank means they can get a denial from anyone. But if we're going to put lenders in there, at least put 3 lenders in there, 2 of them being your preferred lenders. Okay. Then we get down to our financing contingency. How long do we have in order to find out if the buyer is going to be able to be approved? Okay. And really understand, we talk about it is how long do we have to find out that they're approved. The right way to think about it is how long do we have to find out that they are declined. That's the more important issue. If everything goes smoothly, the loan goes perfect, it does not matter when that approval takes place, as long as it's before the closing and we show up to the closing table. And in that case, the contingency that we're working on never comes into play. The purpose of this contingency is if we get denied for the loan, the buyer gets their earnest money back. Okay, so we're more concerned about them getting denied. Okay, but buyer shall have blank number of days from the binding agreement date to determine if they're going to get denied. So what's typical in here? I would say for your average lender, 28 to 30 days is probably a good number to put in there. A couple of caveats to that. If you want to be more competitive, that needs to be shorter, but make sure the lender tells you they can get it done in that time frame. And don't trust most lenders. That they're ambitious. They want the loan. They're going to overpromise and underdeliver very often, particularly if they work for very big companies. So I typically like to see a longer time period in there for a Wells Fargo, a SunTrust, a Bank of America. The big companies like that tend to move slow. So probably want to see at least 35 days in there. If there is any down payment assistance programs that are being used, we're going to need a longer length of time, because both the down payment assistance program has to approve them and the lender has to approve them. So 35 days would probably be good in those terms, but not less than what the lender tells you they're going to need. So if the lender tells you I'm going to need 40 days, put 40 days in there. Okay. And then this paragraph specifies a timeline that has to take place in order for your client to get their earnest money back. So make sure you're very familiar with this paragraph, okay, so you know how best to protect your client, because inside of that timeline, they have to get denied. You have to notify the other side that they've been denied. And then within 7 days, you have to provide them a copy of the loan denial letter. Okay. Now the notification has to happen inside of this timeline. The loan denial letter they can receive outside of the timeline, but it has to be within 7 days of the notification. So keep those things in mind. Make sure you understand this. Read every paragraph. Know these documents backwards and forwards. The next really important paragraph is the appraisal contingency. What happens if the appraisal comes in low? So in all of our financing contingencies, the appraisal contingency has been moved inside of that document, and this is where it lives. So, and what this appraisal contingency says is that the lender's going to hire one or more appraisers to do an appraisal, and if it appraises for less than the contract price, here's what rights the buyer has. And for every one of our financing contingencies, it's something different. For the conventional loan, the right that they have is to ask to reduce the sales price. And it says right here, if any such appraisal is for less than the purchase price, buyer shall within blank days of binding agreement date have the right to request the seller reduce the sales price of the property to a price not less than the appraised price by submitting an amendment to sales price. So we get a low appraisal, the buyer has to submit an amendment to sales price asking that the sales price be lowered to the appraised value. That's the only right they have, okay? Either that or pay the difference out of pocket, okay? Here's the next sentence is so important. In the event the buyer does not timely submit an amendment to sales price, buyer shall be deemed to have waived buyer's right to do so, and this agreement shall no longer be subject to an appraisal contingency. So if you get an appraisal that you know is low, it's not enough just to call the other agent and let them know it's low. It's not enough to send them a text or an email. You have to follow what the contract says and submit an amendment to sales price. And if you don't do that in a timely manner, your buyer loses the right to request that they do that, and they're going to have to pay the difference or leave the contract and lose their earnest money. And that's our two primary jobs once we go under contract is protect our client's earnest money and to get to the closing table. Okay, there continues to be additional steps that have to be followed Just because we submit an amendment to sales price does not mean the seller has to agree. The seller shall, within 3 days of the date of an amendment to sales price, accept, reject, or seek to negotiate with the buyer something in the middle. Okay, so our appraisal came in $5,000 low. The seller can say, yes, we'll lower it that $5,000. No, we won't lower it that $5,000. Or try and negotiate something different. Okay, and as long as everybody agrees that something different works. So we'll lower the sales price $5,000, but we want to reduce the seller's contributions to closing by $2,000. Or we'll lower the sales price $3,500, but we want the buyer to pay $1,500 above sales price. As long as everybody agrees, that is perfectly fine. Okay. But they only have 3 days once the amendment to sales price has been delivered to do that negotiating or decide to accept or reject. Okay. If they do not come to an agreement, we don't have an assigned amendment to sales price within those 3 days, buyer shall have 3 days, but not later than 1 day prior to closing, to terminate this agreement without penalty, meaning they get their earnest money back. If the buyer does not terminate the agreement within those 3 days, their right to terminate due to the failure to agree to an amendment to sales price shall be waived, and buyer shall close on the property for the purchase price set forth in this agreement. So if we miss that 3-day timeline, we miss the opportunity to terminate the contract and get our earnest money back. The buyer then has to buy the property at the contract price, or if they terminate, they're losing their earnest money. Last thing on here is our signature page with all the parties signing. So hope that explanation is helpful. If you've got any additional questions about the conventional loan exhibit, call me, text me, or email me. Have a great day.